everybody, it's Enna. I'm very sorry it's been a minute. I have been busy with work and life, and I've not had the same privacy to record. Um, but I am doing this now. I said last video that I would be recording my newest character and then a Riptide video after. This isn't technically untrue, but I've changed which character I'm doing. I was originally going to do a character I'm playing in a DC superheroes game. I think it's technically Mutants and Mastermind, but the setting is DC. However, I was given the opportunity to play a character I've played previously in a campaign, and continuing her story, so she is now technically the newest, and I wanted to do her old art first, because honestly, it's probably some of the better work I've done. At least her first drawing. Her second drawing I will if you're on, but I'll share them both. I'm trying something a little different, where instead of trying to match up this voice recording to the video and have like kind of relevant narration going on, I am just going to speak, and I am going to match the length of the speed draw up to this audio instead of vice versa. Just because I always end up making my speed draws very, very quick, and I don't have that much time to talk, and I feel like I have to cram in a lot more talking into a compressed little bit of time, so we're going to try this instead. So this right here is my character, Corey, no last name, and she is from Scion. If you are unfamiliar with Scion, it's like Percy Jackson, the TTRPG. Not that it's literally a Percy Jackson licensed, like TTRPG, but it is a world in which every mythology is real, and everybody knows this, and there are some people out in the world known as Scions. These people are either the descendants of gods, they can also be a god reincarnated, or a little fragment of a god, or you could just be a prophet or a god's chosen, or so many other ways to be incorporated in the mythology. There's a type of scion that I believe just takes up the mantle of someone, not even necessarily a god. So you could be like Achilles and have to relive that legend, more or less. Anyway, Scion's a fun game. I love Scion. I have played Scion now twice. I will start talking about the first campaign, so you have background for this campaign, since it is a direct continuation of the original Scion campaign I played. So the primary conflict of the first campaign was an eternal winter forming. Winter had been going on about a month or two longer than it was supposed to, so it wasn't anything major. I mean, that is still major, but it wasn't anything apocalyptic yet. But the concern with winter lasting longer than it's supposed to is, while the source of it was not Norse in nature, since every mythology is coexisting and affecting each other and happening all at once, while the cause is not Norse, it could hypothetically become Fimbulvinter. I'm probably butchering that, which is a 3-year long winter that is one of the events that lead up to Ragnarok, which is a world-ending event. The actual source of the prolonged winter was Greco-Roman in nature. So my character Corey is a Scion, an incarnate Scion, which means she is a god, or a fraction of a god, brought back to life, reincarnated. I don't have the exact timeline for her laid out in front of me, but I believe 3 or 4 months ago, talking from the perspective of the start of this campaign, the timeline's very different now in the new campaign. She emerged from the soil. She erupted out of the ground near a florist shop, and that's her first memory, her first existence on this planet is trying to dig her way out of the ground, choking on dirt. She has no memory of her former life, and since everybody knows about Scions and knows weird stuff happens with the gods, everybody kind of assumed it had something to do with mythology, that she was some sort of Scion or had some sort of other thing going on. But since she wasn't expressing any abilities at this time, nobody really had any guesses. So she just lived and worked at that florist shop for a bit. That backstory didn't get interacted with much in the first one, but she was living with a very old woman who was a botanist. She was running a florist shop that she was allowing victims of domestic violence to work at while they were getting back up on their feet. Only a few months into her existence, I believe the CIA or maybe the FBI, it has been like a year and a half in real life, collected Corey from her place of work and her home, and accused her of being a terrorist. She was not the only person this occurred to. This occurred to several other Scions. However, they were saved and released by Odin, who took the form of an FBI agent, took the lead on that, and then just released him out into the wild. And Odin so kindly informed Corey of her source, being that she was the incarnate of Persephone. More specifically, Persephone and Hades had been murdered in the underworld, and things were out of control there. There was just people spilling out en masse, monsters on the loose, and not everybody was familiar with the fact, most people were not familiar with the fact in any pantheon that Persephone and Hades had been murdered. As far as they were simply missing. This was some sort of plot by Loki, though the specifics of that plot and the purposes of it were not necessarily discovered. But Corey's absence as Persephone is what triggered the ongoing winter, as she never returned for spring like she was supposed to her mother. So the first thing the party has to do is try and return Corey, even as an incarnate, back to Demeter to trigger spring again. We had a lot of side questing in this, and also, since we were on the run from the federal government, it was pretty hard to travel all the way to Greece, but we managed. Along the way, Corey managed to discover some of her own abilities and grew a little bit. I won't get too much into the mechanical side of things, but I will say she got two, one's an item, one's a companion, that helped soup her up a little bit. One was the fruit from the garden below, which was a pomegranate that allowed her to slip into the underworld as a form of fast travel, essentially, where she could slide in through safe passages in the underworld and pop back out in the overworld, and travel that distance much quicker than she would otherwise. Additionally, she got Cerberus. Cerberus also presumably died with Persephone and Hades in the assassination. But since companions have dots, we had to negotiate size and appearance for Cerberus. So I believe Cerberus was just a rapidly growing, like, maybe ever mutating dog. I don't remember if at his lowest dots if he had one head or not, and then grew two others. I think he might have started out with three, but started from like a puppy, like a puppy size, and then grew to the size of like a room of a house. One of the other characters was playing from the Lovecraftian playbook. I do not remember what they were the descendant of. Some unknowable horror, surely. But they had a time dilation ability. Most people didn't participate in his time dilation. One person did, though, which screwed them both over pretty bad. As the consequence of that is the Hounds of Tyndalos. They are hounds that inhabit the angles of time, but also the angles of just things. So they step out of like corners of a room, and they are a consequence of time travel or time dilation. I think in the original story it was time travel. Uh, this is time dilation, which is considered a form of time travel. Unfortunately, you can't like kill the Hounds of Tyndalos at all. So I think the solution for that was using a loophole we found with one of the Lovecraftian Scion's items. We were able to create a portal system essentially. So what would happen was we would take. They were only after the two people who used time dilation. We would keep sending them away to give the Hounds of Tyndalos time to have to travel to them. They travel very quickly, but it's like enough of a gap for them to readjust. They essentially teleport with the angle thing, but it was just an issue of creating as much time as possible. And I don't remember what ritual the Lovecraftian character did, but he definitely worsened his state of being a person by doing some Lovecraftian ritual, as in he gave himself more over to the horrors he descends from. And to expand on the broken system we found was he had an ability or an item that allowed him to travel through anything that could be considered like a passage. He could create a portal there. Um, Anything that could be considered a transitional area, or something in that ballpark. And it was supposed to be you have to search for things and negotiate with the DM on. It was supposed to be you have to search for areas and negotiate with the DM for what would be considered a transitional like gateway. Um, and we technically did that. We made the argument that Cerberus's Maw was a transitional gateway once he reached a very large size, because you could step through it and you'd be from outside the dog to inside the dog. And our GM was like, yeah, I guess. And Cerberus was not happy about having people step into his jaw that he couldn't eat. Um, but that was a very easy method of travel we ended up creating. There was a bunch of shenanigans I don't really remember outside of the Hounds of Tyndalos, but the end of the campaign came when we finally reached Olympus, and on the travel up was somebody attempting to take up the mantle of Lycaon. So the way it works in Scion, roughly, I'm not very good and up to date on the rules, is if you try and recreate moments of myth and take on traits of a mythological figure, you are taking up their mantle. And to an extent, you are becoming them in terms of you are no longer a separate entity in them in the realm of myth, though you are not necessarily them. Something like that. Lycaon, the person attempting to take up the mantle of Lycaon, was working with Loki, and I don't remember the exact plot because we killed him before he could finish his monologue. Probably the very traditional, like, mythology setup of it's time for the new gods to come in, you know? But after a, like, long boss fight, we eventually finished him off and were able to climb all the way back up Olympus, where Corey met with her mother and was given her next quest that she would have to do, which is find Hades, because she is not the only god who died there, and there is a second god missing from this equation. This ending was slightly retconned because technically at the end of this, all of the characters got upgraded from a hero to a demigod. and where she was told to find Hades was different. But yeah, this would all be slightly retconned with the start of the new campaign, which I'm finally getting to. Okay, I just pulled out my notes for this campaign, so hopefully this will help me have a better timeline for you guys. Okay, I forgot I went back in the notes, and so my notes are in the form of a diary, and I forgot I went back to before she got taken by the CIA, soon after she first appears, and then like an entry dedicated to the campaign, I believe. And I have dates in the timeline laid out in all of them. So she appears a little bit before September 12th, 2023. April 18th is about when she finishes all of her stuff with Lycaon and ending the Eternal Winter. So it was about 3 months of winter, 4 months of winter. But the next entries that are before the campaign starts, but after the current campaign starts, but after the previous one ended. So some of the issues in the first campaign were resolved, so it is not something I need to concern myself with anymore. Loki has been quote-unquote handled, and the underworld is being attempted to be handled by Nyx. Now onto what I'm specifically drawing here. This is not technically Corey. This is Persephone. This isn't technically the reality of what happened, as Persephone and Hades had their throats slit in bed, I believe, while they were sleeping. However, I took some artistic liberties, and this was also before I found out more of the specifics of what happened. I liked the mental image of her final burst of life growing all these flowers around her. And I literally just did all of this on Cool Factor alone. I know ichor isn't gold, really. I think it's described as clear, but drawing a clear fluid would, one, not... I didn't think it would read well. I didn't think I would be able to draw that very clearly. And two, just wouldn't look as cool. I knew her cause of death, so that's all accurate. I went back and forth a few times on what color to make all of her, really. Because I feel like Hades has a pretty codified, like, look. I feel like it's dark hair, dark eyes, extremely pale. I went to everybody I knew and I gave them all of the colors of the dress I had in mind. I think it was, it's in the video, I think it flashes through them, but like green and purple, and I think there was a blue one as well. And I ultimately liked the look of the purple dress more. It felt more suitable for, like, I feel like it felt more suitable for her being a chthonic god. I figure she probably dresses a little differently for her time out during spring and summer, and she probably looks a little different during spring and summer. I figured, you spend half year in the underworld, you're probably pretty pale, and she died. And she died, like, towards the end of fall. So I figured she'd be pretty pale, and plus she's dead, so that adds to the paleness. I think I took a lot of the color out of her lips towards the end, and I hollowed out her eyes a little bit. I was pretty set on red hair. I don't think I cycled through that much, if at all. Yeah, I'm going back. Red, green, purple. It was red, not blue. And I also think I was pretty set on green eyes. I think I was like, red hair, green eyes, and then the dress was the only thing I bounced around on. The flowers growing in her, that just felt cool. Um, it's all cool factor, really. There's no reason for her to have a pomegranate in her hand except to denote her as Persephone, which is like kind of how the Greeks did it in art, you know? They just put some symbol of the god nearby to be like, hey, by the way, this is who this is. So yeah, I just kind of stuck a pomegranate in her hand, and her hand is stained with the pomegranate juice. The skull is also just there for cool factor. It's not anybody in particular. I am planning on at some point drawing Corey and Hades for the new campaign. And also, since Hades recalls his previous life, he does not have any sort of alternative identity. I think I mentioned that. But, like, he is simply Hades. He doesn't... Corey's the only person allowed to call him that because he views her as an equal of sorts, but most other people, he just refuses to allow them to refer to him by anything except whatever title is relevant to them. But unfortunately, the solution for this campaign is going to be a little harder since technically the qualifications for winter is ritualistic death. And it's kind of hard to do that when you are entirely mortal, and it will be much harder for you to come back for spring again, which means that you might accidentally trigger Fimbulvinter if you do it wrong still. So this is probably more a quest for godhood to be able to solve the issue. The reference image here helped me out a whole lot because, one, I'm not very good with hands, and two, I'm not very good at posing and posturing, especially since I draw all of this on my phone with my finger. I feel like I do a much better job when I have like a pen or a pencil in my hand to help me sketch out and pose, but otherwise it is very, very difficult for me. So I do a lot of, I take very heavily from my references. I tried very hard to just use the reference for posing the body, but in the end I was like, yeah, I can't do these hands, I don't know how to do that, man. So a lot of the drawings, not a lot, all of the Riptide drawings I do are, but I was originally planning on redrawing a lot of old drawings for this series, and this is a pretty old drawing I did. However, I think it's probably one of my better works that still stands pretty well on its own, and I genuinely am concerned about me making it look worse if I redrew it today. And that's a worry I have with some of my redraws. I feel like that second Riptide redraw I did, there were some things about it that looked poorer to me. I didn't think looked as good. I think in the first one I accidentally stumbled into a better sort of anatomy and style, with no knowledge of myself doing that, just kind of accidentally working that out. And in the new one, I was trying to create a look more consistent with the first redraw I did, and in the process, I think I made the anatomy poorer, and I lost some of the stylization I liked in the initial one. But I'm not displeased with it, and it's still practice. I need to get a sketchbook so I can practice my anatomy more. And I feel like you'll see that in the second drawing that I'll upload at some point, because I have two Corey drawings, and the other one has really good background work, I think. I think it's some of my best, like, work on a background and, like, the space around the character. But Corey herself is in a weird pose, and she is wearing a dress that hides a lot of the context of how she is sitting and how the pose is. And I'm concerned she just looks incredibly short with the way I made it, but that's okay. Thank you guys so much for watching. My next video will be the video I initially promised of my Mutants and Mastermind character, and then the video after that will probably be Riptide, unless I change my mind entirely on both of those things, but that is what I currently have planned. I do want to show those off. if you want to keep seeing me and you want to see my art and video quality improve, it would mean so very much to me if you subscribed. And it would also be pretty cool of you to like this video. Thanks again, and have a great day.